Hey everybody, it's Jenn and Joe, and welcome back to another Tuesday Live, an episode where we are going to dive really deep into the art of the wraparound mortgage. So I know
I'm excited.
We're going there. So we get a lot of questions as to what the heck is the difference between subject to and a wrap mortgage. And a lot of people think you can only sell on a wrap. And, it's the catchy phrase of sub to. So we're going to break it down and hopefully you'll have a great sense of why we love wrap mortgages, how you can find people that have mortgages that you can then take over making their payments monthly on their behalf, and all the nitty gritty things. And if you're live, ask the questions. That's what we're here for.
Bam. Well, what an entrance that was.
Woo!
Well, today it's really fun because obviously we hear buying real estate with creative finance. So what does that big umbrella term mean, creative finance? That means buying real estate without using banks, without using your credit, and most of the time, not a lot of cash. Not a lot of cash can still mean thousands of dollars, but we're not talking 20% down, 50% down, and all these crazy things, right? And that's kind of the benefit of creative finance, because the term was beat the banks, right? So if a bank wants...
Who says that? Beat the bank.
That's the deal with creative finance. You want to get a better deal than you can at the bank. What does that mean? The banks want 20% down. They're going to want to charge a 7-8% interest rate.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, right now, especially we're beating the banks with all of the interest rates that we're able to just take over, whether it's a 0% on a seller finance deal or we talk about, the mortgages today.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk a lot about wraparound mortgages and why this is my favorite way to buy real estate with creative finance.
Disclaimer. If you're listening to this, you will never use these words. Well, I shouldn't say never, but you shouldn't be using these words when chatting with your seller. When you're really asking the questions and you're getting into that, this is actually like the nitty gritty of the behind the scenes. Like, I want to be a confident investor. I want to know what these terms mean. But when we're talking to our sellers, we're not talking about wraparound mortgages. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
I am glad you brought that up because we're going to start there.
Okay.
I hear a lot of folks talk about, I explained to the seller that I'm going to be buying it subject to, or I'm buying it with a wraparound mortgage. Let me tell you guys, you're confusing your sellers. They don't understand these terms. Most of you listening don't understand these terms fully. So somebody who doesn't do this as a real estate investor, you're really going to confuse them. And if somebody's confused, they typically go to no.
A confused mind says no.
So I don't use terms like I'm going to buy your house with a wraparound mortgage. Okay. And I'm not picking anybody because that used to be me, guys.
Yeah, that's what we said.
I used to tell everybody how I'm going to buy the house with a wraparound mortgage and I'm going to put it into a land trust with my rent to own, blah, 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 blah. Diary of the mouth. That's exactly what it was. I was explaining way too much. Didn't need to. So what we did was we realized from trial and error, but from doing this for the last, since 2016, 17, when we first started with creative finance, back then I used to say that stuff. But what I learned, everybody's like, no, I don't know what a subject to is. I don't want to do that. I don't know what a wraparound is. I don't want to do that. So once I explain, I'm going to buy it with seller financing, where I'm going to buy it, I'm going to close on it, and the existing loan is going to stay in place. And especially now, guys, it's a pretty easy sell to the sellers. And the reason why is the deal I talked to yesterday. We have a deal that we talked to yesterday, a seller. They have a house in upstate New York. They bought it a few years ago. House is turnkey, really doesn't need anything besides like a handrail. But they get sent out to the West Coast because he's in the military. So now he's living in Seattle, Washington. They put their house on the market and it's not selling. It's been on the market for 217 days and it's just sitting there. They took a VA loan out. A VA loan means that he put zero money down. He bought it. They rolled in closing costs and everything. So this seller has no equity. They can't afford to lower the price of the house any lower. So they saw one of the blue ads in a Facebook group that says, does anybody have a house for sale? It's not market ready, right? We always talk about that, how to generate leads for free. That's how this lead came in. They said they would be open to doing terms. And when I explained it to the seller that I'll buy it, but I'm going to keep the existing mortgage in place because back when they bought it in 2021, he says, let me look up what my interest rate is. And he looks it up. He's like, oh, I've got a 2.75 rate. I was like, giddy up. I said, obviously, if I were to buy your house at this price for what you owe, and then I were to buy that with a 7% rate or a 6 or an 8% rate, that payment would jump up significantly. And now the property would no longer cash flow. So in order for me to pay that price, but still make it a win for me and them, is I'm going to buy it, but the loan is going to stay in place.
Mhm.
And I got to tell you, this was when I found out this strategy even existed in 2016, my head exploded. I could not believe this was a thing that you could even do. That I can buy a house, but the loan stays in the seller's name, so I could take advantage of that low payment and that low interest rate. And I know what some of you might thinking, well, you're just assuming the loan. It's not. Assuming the loan means I need to contact the bank. I need to provide them a credit report. I need to provide them 2 years of tax returns. And I actually have to qualify for that loan, for that debt. And
Yeah.
then,
So if you're hearing somebody to use those words interchangeable, an assumption, or wrap around mortgage, or subject to, they are not the same
they're
thing.
not the same. So no, we are not assuming the loan. Let's just be perfectly clear.
Yes.
Okay. Because this happens a lot. I'll say, oh,
Mhm.
you're going to assume it was subject to. I'm like, those are completely two different things
Mm-mm.
and they do not work well together. So we're not assuming it because I'm not putting the debt in my name. I'm not qualifying for it. I'm not asking the bank for permission to make payments to that bank. Right. So just make that crystal clear. But when we found that strategy out, that's when I realized we can buy as many houses as we want.
Mhm. And how much did we pay in marketing for our first wraparound mortgage deal?
The first wrap deal was free.
I know. Isn't that
Free.
crazy? Because we had a Facebook page and it was popping up on her Google, I think is what happened.
Yeah, she saw our Facebook page and says, hey, I see you guys buy, sell real estate and you do rent to own. Would you be interested in buying my house? She bought it. She lived in it, met a guy, moved in with him because they had a bigger house,
Mhm.
had a family, was renting out her old house. People moved in, kind of messed it up, moved out in the middle of the night because the neighbors told us, and they fixed it up. She's like, I don't want to be a landlord anymore. I asked if she'd be open to selling it with seller financing. And she's like, sure, I would, where I'm going to take over her payment. We still own that house. And that was what, 2018?
It was 2018. And what was her reasoning? Like, she didn't even want to go with a realtor. Like,
she didn't want to deal with putting on the market. She didn't want a realtor. She wanted a quick, fast, easy sale. They were making 2 mortgage payments on the new house. And now this one was sitting there empty. She did not want to rent it again because the previous people messed it up.
That just blows my mind. It's almost like we manifested it in a way because, we had done our first deal, seller finance, the year before, I guess it was the year before, 2017.
Yeah.
And here someone just randomly reaches out because we use social media. So again, dust off your phones and stop scrolling for, fun or doom scrolling there and start making money on your phone, helping people out. Post on your social media about what you could do.
Well, and I think that's the key to it. We were just in a group earlier today and it was really interesting and it was refreshing to hear it. But like, I don't really use my Instagram or social media to, like, there's a little bit you'll scroll here or there to watch, but much other than that, I rather do other things. So if I'm using social media, it's to make connections, ultimately to make money, to look for deals, things like that. So when I'm sharing on like this podcast, it's on our social media. People will see this, realize that we buy houses. Hi, and if you don't know, we do buy houses. So if you have somebody who wants to sell their house, reach out and I'd love to buy it. See how that went, everybody? Not that hard. But that's what we do, guys. And you do that message consistently. And now every single day, I have random wholesalers, random realtors, random friends, investors, everybody reaching out to me and sending me deals to look at. I don't even have to spend money on sponsored ads anymore if we don't want to. However, we love this and we do. Because I don't want to rely on just wholesaling. I like multiple streams of getting leads, but every day I am getting people who say, Joe, I've got a deal. Would you want to take a look at it if this is in your area or whatever?
Yeah. So dialing back to that first mortgage, that was like the big takeover. I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I have to, it's one thing to send seller Steve, his $500 a month, payment every month to Bank of Steve. It was seller financing, but man, now I've got to pay, Bank of PennyMac, I think it is. And, on her behalf. And so just that level of
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's a big step, and so just making sure that you always cross your T's and dot your I's, and really when it comes down to it, make that mortgage payment a little bit early. Not scheduling it on the first, ideally, right? You already want it into the bank in their hands, in their possession. You want to structure your insurance properly, and a lot of people will ask, well, why don't you just buy sub two? Why do I need to do a wrap? Like I don't really care about the differences. And what are your thoughts on that? What would you say if someone? I mean, even had people who wouldn't buy a deal from us because we refused to do a sub two. And I just wanted to dive into that. Let's go there a little bit.
Okay, let's get you up. So why? And this is because I learned from the godfather of real estate. Okay. And so, but it was also too, it's like actually putting it down and looking at why.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first reason why I like to buy with a wrap versus subject to is because with a wrap, I'm protecting my seller. So what does that mean? If I'm buying it with a wrap, which is short for wraparound mortgage. So what does that mean? It's not me going to the bank, taking out a new mortgage. A mortgage is just a few pieces of paper, which is an agreement saying that I agree to these terms, right? And then they're going to record that. That's the note. So a wraparound mortgage means I'm going to buy Jen's house for $200,000. They're going to create that note and they're going to record it. But also in that paperwork with a wraparound mortgage, just like any other mortgage, there's language inside of that that says if the buyer doesn't pay the seller, the lender can foreclose on that property and get it back. So how am I protecting my seller that way? Well, as the buyer, or if anybody else is going to be buying the deal, if for some reason they don't pay, I want to have the seller have the ability to foreclose and take the property back. Okay. Number one. Number two, if that seller decides they want to get a mortgage or a car or anything else later on, and they're going to have to apply for credit, the lender is going to pull their credit report. They're going to see a mortgage of a house that they don't even own anymore. And I used to work at a car dealership in the finance office. So I would see your credit report and I could see everything on there. So it doesn't get hidden and the banks see it all too. So the reason why I like doing it on a wrap is because with that mortgage created, it shows that we are making the payments. So when I have a lender say, hey, I need to have proof that you guys are making the payments, I have my note, my mortgage, the wraparound that was created, and my HUD statement showing that we closed on the property. And when I furnish those two things to the banks, that's going to really help them understand who the owner is and who's making the payment. When you do subject to, the difference is you're just deeding the property to the buyer. There's no note in place. There's no mortgage recorded saying that if the buyer doesn't pay, the seller can foreclose. Now, I know in certain states, there's something called a performance deed. And, in some areas that might work. But in New York and Florida and many other states, the judges do not recognize what's called a performance deed. And what is a performance deed, Joe? If you buy subject to, so like some people teach, that you can file what's called a performance deed, which means if I stop paying, you can take the property back, right? But in Florida and many of these other states, it's not recognized and that doesn't work. So when I'm talking with attorneys, because that's where we first started in New York, which is an attorney state, not a title company state, you're dealing with attorneys, and the buyer and the seller both have to be represented by an attorney. And I will tell you, if you're trying to do this stuff, attorneys are involved, it's very difficult to find. And I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's very challenging to find attorneys who will close on subject to deals, especially in New York. But when we're buying on a wrap, it makes them feel better that their client is protected because there's a mortgage in place. Now, it doesn't work with every attorney because some attorneys don't really understand how this works too. I'm going to go there. I have a cousin who's an attorney in New York, and I've never used him for one closing. He's not a real estate attorney. He has closed real estate deals, but he has other things that he focuses on. So if he does a closing, he does charge more than my real estate attorney, who that's all they do are real estate closings. And, my real estate attorney knows really deep into how real estate works and all the different ways where, a general attorney doesn't know it maybe as much. So sometimes, can you talk to an attorney? And they're going to say, this is illegal. You can't do that. They might. It's not true. I've heard realtors tell me, you can't do that. That's illegal. And I'm like, well, it is written on a HUD statement how to do this, right on line 203 and 503 of a HUD statement. So it's not illegal. And then they would say, well, I would never let my client do that. I said, well, personal preference and breaking the law are two different things, right? So we just want to have really good clarity on this, because the way to success on doing this is to keep it simple. So I would say don't overly complicate it. Don't talk about to sellers with these super complex terms. So that's what we do. And then I know a lot of people love selling on wraps.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to get into that too. Do we sell on wraps? The answer is no.
Nope.
I like to buy with wraps because we own the property. We get to write off depreciation. We get the benefits of appreciation. We do rent to own. So if one of my renters, like we had just happened recently, what happened in March?
He left.
Just up and left after
Emailed
5
me.
years.
I got an email saying he left the key on the gate and he was out.
So if we sold it to him with seller financing or with a wrap, that deed is, in the air, or if it's in his name.
So what if, walk me down that? He would have had to sign some paperwork and filed it.
Maybe you have it pre-signed just in case, and it sits at an attorney.
Okay.
Maybe he bought it on a land contract, which means the deed didn't officially transfer to his name until it's sold. However, you're usually going to have to chase them down for some signatures, and he just up and left. It was like, my phone number doesn't work, because I tried calling him, like, hey, what is going on? Phone didn't work, just an email said I left, key on the gate. So when I own it with a wrap, but I sell it with rent to own, so I still own the property, when my tenant moves, even in the middle of the night, it's still my house. So that's why I buy on creative finance, like wraps, but I sell with a lease option.
Well, I want to dive into a little bit, because obviously, our whole goal is to buy, when we're looking at a wrap mortgage, first thing I'm doing, I don't know about you, obviously, I want to know how much is the monthly payment, and I want to know what interest rate do they have it locked in at? Because what we're finding here, especially, in Florida where we live, that if they've just purchased their house, and I don't know, guys, side note, every 2 years seems to be the 2-year mark when people move down to Florida. They're either in love with it and they'll stay, or they're 2 years, I'm out. But it just seems to be the recent people who've purchased a home and now they want out. Beautiful home in Sarasota that our acquisitionist, our closer, just sent over the other day. But the payment, you guys, oh my goodness, it doesn't cash flow at all.
No.
It's a $5,500 a month payment. It's got a 6.75% interest rate. And the comps, the rentals around the area are $3,400.
Well, that's the challenge we're finding out. But you remember what their rate was?
Yeah, I think it was 6.75.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's never going to cash flow at those high rates, especially in South Florida.
Yeah. So the art of the wraparound mortgage, ladies and gentlemen, is making sure that, the rate is ideally low, because what was the percentage of how many people have a lower than a?
So 70% of people who currently have a mortgage on their house have an interest rate under 4%.
There you go. So
that's a lot.
There's a handful of people who are eagerly looking to try to sell their house, and they're in a pickle, clearly. Because at $5,500 a month versus what it rents for at $3,400,
you're upside down $2,000 a month.
I mean, even if you list it on market, the houses aren't moving.
No. So here's what I see happen a lot of times. Not us, but other investors, they're going to write up that deal, and they're going to write it up, and they're going to say, well, I'm going to offer it to somebody else as a wrap, and I'm going to wrap it at 8%. You're going to pay $6,000 a month for the same house that you could rent for $3,500 across the street. That deal's going to sit. So the deal's got to really make sense. So guys, when we're looking at deals now, you got to be really mindful of a few things. A, does it cash flow? Does this deal even make sense? Right. And what kind of interest rate do they have? Because, the deals, and we had one that came across that had an 8 something rate. We weren't even close to cash flowing.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge because we have some. Right now, we've got Audie is his name. He's got a beautiful house in Cape Coral, Florida. It's a 3,100 square foot house, $1 million home on the water, on one of the canals, boat lift, in-ground pool, the big screened-in lanai in the back, 3,100 square foot house, U-shaped driveway. It's really, really nice house. He's okay with doing it, no money down, doing a wrap. Okay. And so for all of you listening, say, well, why would he do that? Well, he's getting divorced and he's moving back up north. He wants to sell it right away. He wants $960 for his property. And guys, he owes $510. He's got $450,000 of equity. And we don't have to give him a dime of that for the next 5 years. No extra payments, no nothing, because we typically buy with no money down. Hint for everybody. Okay. So on that deal, do we want to do the deal? I want to. Beautiful house, beautiful neighborhood, $1 million home, turnkey. Here's the better part. It's got a 2.99% interest rate.
Woo-hoo-hoo.
So it is a smoking deal, but it does come with some challenges, because if it was that great of a deal, I would like drove down and just had him sign it right away. But the
You would not
challenge,
have driven down there.
I probably would not. You're right. I would have just docu-signed it. But the difference is, even at a 2.99 rate, guys, with the taxes being $15,000 a year and the insurance being another $15,000 a year, tax and insurance are $2,500 a month out of the $4,800 a month payment. So at almost $5,000 a month, does the property cash flow? Not even at 2.99, it doesn't. So there are some challenges out there right now. I know.
Literally, you just blew my mind. Because I'm like, well, if he only owes X amount, like literally with all of the taxes and insurance,
It's the taxes.
Did he get is it assessed higher? Is that what happened?
It is, because he recently bought it for, I think, 8 something.
Okay.
Because he bought it a few years ago, and then they moved down, and then they're getting divorced, and he
just like either put a lot down or paid a lot off.
He paid a lot down, put a lot down when he bought it. So he bought it for, I think, $850. Took it out a loan for like a little over $500,000. Still owes about $500,000 on it, and says, I want $960 because the Zestimate on there's over $1 million.
Well, because we hear people say, like, I don't care if it cash flows. So like, what are these people doing with these properties? They're just going to wait and bank on appreciation and just lose money every month.
Well, that's a great question. You know, sometimes they might want to try to do Airbnb, but also too, like, maybe you're in a scenario, this is not your first rental. Maybe you have a lot of rentals and you're generating a lot of income per month, and you wouldn't mind having a really beautiful house with not a lot of money into it. And you could write off depreciation and things like that. But for me, guys, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. So we want to be able to make some money on that deal. Spot on. Cash flow is king. And so that's the deal, right? You got to be able to make money on these properties, because let me tell you, as nice as it is, things will happen. Hey, Alexis, people stop paying. They pay you late. You know, things happen to the property. It might need updating. I mean, who knows what will happen? So you got to make sure that you're generating income per month, unless you already have so much real estate.
Like you've wholesaled so many things that now you need like some
write-offs.
Yeah, write-offs.
You need some write-offs, right? So buying some properties is a really, really big write-off. Now, however, maybe I wasn't cash flowing, but I had a 2.99 rate, and he gave us a huge discount on it too. Well, maybe if I got a bunch of free equity, well, then maybe I could not cash flow for a very short time. However, there's going to have to be some really special circumstances around that, because once again, I want to get that cash flow. If the market goes down, I know everybody does the Facebook thing, like, oh, is the market crashing? They like do that in the Facebook thing just to get looks. You know, even if it does or if it doesn't, I don't care. If I'm able to make cash flow on every single of our properties every single month, if it goes down, okay, it'll go back up. And if it goes up, it'll probably eventually go down a little bit, but then go back up. So it doesn't matter. Cash flow for me is king, because if people are buying real estate and your only bet is, I don't care about cash flow, I'm only banking on appreciation. Well, if you did that in 2004, 2005, and 2006, and you were hoping to sell in 2010, 12, 5, 10 years, guys, you took a bloodbath. Okay. Your appreciation wasn't working. So if you were having to sell and you weren't getting cash flow, this is what happened. And a lot of investors got out of the game completely, or really took huge losses. So for me, I love having that flexibility where if the market does go down, if I'm able to still make a bunch of money every single month, I could withstand the storm. And that's the key. Well,
let's talk about our latest little cutie patootie that we acquired up in Jacksonville. Cute little condo or townhouse, right? Not a condo. There's a little difference. It's like
it is a townhouse style condo. Because there's obviously condos, and some of these are like, big, tall, long buildings.
Yeah.
Some of them are townhouse, like the one we have in Brockport, where it's 3 floors. It's got well, I don't think the one here has a basement. Our New York
Probably
one does,
not.
not here. But you've got, it looks almost like a row of townhouses, but it is a condo.
Which, by the way, guys, I learned a new term yesterday talking to my contractor when we were going to do a rent to own. So we found someone who's going to hang up yellow signs, and Amazon delivered them. Apparently, someone porch pirated them, meaning they're gone. So working on that part. But so I had to share because there's always some fun stuff happening behind the
You've
scenes.
never heard of porch pirates?
When Kevin, our contractor, told me that, and he's like, how old is Kevin?
Oh, he's getting up there.
I don't know. It's like an older term, a newer term.
Girl, you just need to watch some World Star. I mean, they got the things.
Comment below. Did you guys know there was a term, porch pirated? Oh my gosh, I about died when he said that to me.
So
yeah,
what does that mean?
Somebody stole our package off of the front porch that I think was delivered. We're still checking on that. Felipa needs to check and see if there was a photo. But we have the yellow signs. That has never happened before. I can't say that in the years of doing this that someone's just stole our yellow signs. I can't imagine what anybody's going to do with those. But
I know. I mean, what are you going to do with them?
I don't know. That's why I was like flabbergasted. But back to the townhome itself. Let's chat about that. Do you know the details?
I do.
All right. Let's dive into those. So
I do.
It's a mortgage.
Yep. Seller just bought it. We did this deal. We just closed on it. So the seller reaches out to us months ago, and he was like, hey, I bought this condo and it's beautiful. Doesn't need anything. It's turnkey. However, I want to get a house with a yard and, you know, do some like yard work and things like that. He's like, I already found my next house. I'm already buying it. I close soon. I just want to sell this property for what I owe on it. So he bought it for $200. He owed like $190. I think we bought it for like $195 or something like that. He was okay with no money down. Right. We just cover, I think it was $6,000 in closing costs because you made that little cool thing. So I remembered. I
made a cool thing.
That little slide that said it on there.
Okay.
So I think it was like $6,400. And now we own this turnkey property in Florida. Right. So what our payment is versus what the area rents for. There's some cash flow in there. Once again, guys, I'm looking for these turnkey properties that have really long terms on them too. So sometimes I have a seller who, you know, they'll give us 20 to 30 years to get them cashed out. The ones that I'm really mindful is if they say, I will sell you my house with seller financing, or I'll sell it with a wrap. So I'll give you an example. The guy who's got $450,000 of equity, he wants to know when he's going to get that. Right. So he gave us up to 5 years. So there's a 5-year term on that deal. And that's why, once again, I haven't like dove headfirst into the thing.
Because 5 is on the shorter end. I don't think we've ever done anything 5.
I don't like to.
7, I think.
I want a 10-year term. So I told Lexi that, listen, if we could look at doing a 10-year term or even longer, I think we could do business. And then she's going back and forth with him right now on that. She actually had a call with him today, just having that conversation, because a 5-year term, if the market takes a dip, that's probably not going to be enough time to really recover and bring it back strong. 10 years, I feel a lot better. So
meaning that the price that it is today, that's
today's price
selling at, like what he thinks his house is worth. So all the equity he believes he has, we're very conservative in the sense that it might not be that in 5 years. And so we want to have a longer term length just to kind of break it down where you're
because I feel like the market right now in South Florida is softening. You know, they say a 6-month supply on the market of houses is a good balanced market. And right now, South Florida is at 5 months. However, many agents say that really anything more than 4 months is really, you know, getting to be a lot. So we have a lot of inventory right now, and it's just continue. There's a lot more inventory, a lot less buyers. Things are still moving, but the inventory has spiked up significantly. From that spike, now it's going to cause a softening in the market. People could call it a crash. Guys, you won't know if this is a crash for 5 years. You won't even know, because month by month, it's going to go down so slowly. You don't recognize it until it's already happened, more than less. However, something is happening, especially in South Florida. And I could see why high prices were recently at an all-time high, then followed up by now the taxes all went up too, because these prices all went up. So
then the insurance got out of control.
Well, and if you think about it, somebody had a house for $400,000 that they bought in 2018. Now they want $1 million for it, especially at the height of the market. So the town had that house assessed at $400,000. You were paying tax on $400,000. The insurance company says, okay, that's a $400,000 house. We're going to insure this as a $400,000 house. You paid so much for taxes. You paid so much for insurance. Now the market went out of control.
2022, let's say that house sells
$1 million, because it would have for $1 million. Now, I know it's crazy.
Yelled that.
Well, now the county and the towns are like, well, that house now is $1 million house, so we need to tax it appropriately, right? So now your taxes went up. The insurance is like, well, that's $1 million house. Now we have to insure it for $1 million. So prices are at an all-time high. Taxes are at all-time high. Insurances, and then you got like HOA, and then the final kicker was interest rates jumped up.
Oh yeah.
So even if you're a cash buyer, you're still dealing with taxes and insurance and high prices. And if you're financing, you also have higher rates too, plus high HOAs. We had one HOA. It's a $1,700 a month payment.
What are they doing for $1,700 a month?
Let me tell you, you better valet my car. I want it cleaned.
I want breakfast in the morning.
I want breakfast in bed. I want my laundry done. Like $1,700 a month for just the HOA. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at that, it's definitely something's got to happen, right? And if you look at every big spike that goes dramatically up, it usually has a correction, and then it continues. So if this happens over the next few years, can it? Maybe. I don't know. Nobody truly knows. But if it does, as long as I'm buying and accumulating cash flowing assets that I have really long terms on, I am a happy camper. So right now, when everybody's, I'm going to wait till rates go down, or I want to buy everything that we can right now.
Without going to the banks.
Or using credit.
Right.
So I am heavy on buy right now. And I think of when we were doing our first handful of deals together back in 2008, everybody's like, oh, I'm not going to buy. Market was crashing. 2009, 10, 11, all of those years when it was continually going down.
Driving around Florida looking at all these houses for sale. Dummies.
We should have bought more in Florida. We were buying them all in New York.
We didn't know.
But although the New York properties have done really well, so
I know.
Can't be mad at that.
What if in 2009 we actually purchased Florida property?
Or 5.
The point is, don't wait. Learn how to do this. Take over someone else's payment. And if you're scoring a low rate and it can still cash flow, chef's kiss, right?
Yeah, because, when the market took a dip, everybody hears 2008, the market crashed. It didn't fully dip to the very bottom until 2012. That was 4 years later. 2013, it was just a crack over that. It was rebounding, but it was still really, really low. Prices were low, not a lot of buyers. So what does that mean? Like, those are the times to really buy, right? So if the market's declining, I'm buying. If the market was going up, I was still buying. We still were.
Yeah.
So just keep on accumulating those deals. And I think that's key.
Can I go through a couple questions?
Let's do it.
All right. We've got here, is a wraparound mortgage the same as a seller finance deal?
What up, Walter? So yes and no. Seller finance is a big term for all of those, but usually seller finance means there's no mortgage on the property, usually, and a wraparound means there definitely was a mortgage on the property. However, when I'm explaining it to a seller, I explain I'm going to buy it with seller financing, which means I'll close on it. And if you have a mortgage, I'll just take over making that payment to your lender. And one of my favorite ways of doing it, I actually ask them, what lender is your mortgage with? And they say, oh, it's with Movement Mortgage. Okay, the way this will work is I'll buy your property, I'll close on it, and I'm going to continue to make that payment to Movement Mortgage on your behalf. And most likely because you have a really low rate, oh, it's 275. Yeah, that's why I want to do it this way. Because if I pay off Movement with a new loan, even from Movement Mortgage, they're not going to give me a 275 rate anymore. So this is why I want to do it this way. And once I explain it to them, really simple, I tend to get a lot more yeses that way.
So he just dropped like probably the purest gold right there. So if you didn't catch it, make sure you rewind a little bit around minute 33 here. Oh my gosh. So when you're in negotiation mode and you've already gathered all your information and now you're really you're explaining what terms are. And that's the part where a lot of people get a little stumped. And so notice how you didn't say wraparound mortgage. You didn't say subject to. you just asked them, the lender, the mortgage company, and then you explained how simply we'll just make those payments.
Yeah. And then explain to them why I want to do it this way. Because a lot of people will be like, well, why do you want to do that? So I explained to them, knowing that that's probably going to be a question. That's why I kind of say it before they even ask the question, right? So good to see you. Thank you for tuning in, Walter.
Woohoo.
Great question.
Adam Taylor, what is going on?
What's up, Adam?
Of course. Confusing question here for us. All right, let's see. Could you sell on a wrap? Could you buy on a wrap and sell on a wrap? Say your payments to the seller's bank are $750 a month. Could you sell it on a wrap to get more of a down payment and then collect $1150 a month from the new wrap buyer and use $750 of that to pay the seller's bank every single month?
Yeah, absolutely can. And that $400 is going to be, or $300 or $400, whatever, $300. That is yours. So many times the way this is done, I buy a house for $200,000. I buy it on a wrap. Their payment in your scenario, let's just say it's $750,
Mm-hmm.
and then I turn around and I sell it to somebody for $250. And maybe when I bought it, that seller had a 3% interest rate, and I'm able to charge somebody a 6% interest rate and a slightly higher price. And then you got some cash flow. The difference is when I sell it on a wrap, I'm no longer the owner of that property. I'm just the bank, which is not a bad thing. But you are just the bank. You don't get to write off like the depreciation and things like that.
Yeah. Boom. Not
Great
too confusing
question,
at all
Adam.
for
No.
you.
You did a great job there, Adam.
Esteban, thank you for being here. And it can be a lot of information. So if this is something that is new to you, please feel free to ask questions. Even if you're watching a replay, we come live every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern to be able to help you guys out, because this is a fantastic strategy to really grow wealth, build your portfolio without having to go to the bank.
With a new one, like the old one could just stay there. Guys, I'm gonna be honest with you, this was like the hardest thing for me to wrap my head around in 2016.
That should be a little video you do, wrapping your head around the wrap.
I love it. Write that down right now, girl.
Take notes, Hattie.
But that's really the key. It is that. That was probably the biggest issue I had with that strategy, was really understanding that. And then when I stopped and got out of my own way, we actually hired some help to teach us how to do this the right way. And that's where I'm a very big, like, don't try to figure this out on your own just by watching YouTube. Like, you actually need to get some real serious help to walk you through all of these little steps, so you don't make one or two or a bunch of little mistakes that could cost, problems later on for
thousands of dollars. Yeah.
Down the road. But once I found this out, I learned the success details on how to do it effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went and did it repeatedly, nonstop. Like,
I wonder how many hours you've logged at this point in your.
Well, they say you got to do 10,000 hours to be an expert in anything. I am well over 10,000 hours, and I'm not calling myself the expert.
No, because you're still always learning. But I'm just like thinking about all the training videos and all of the mentor calls and all of the things that we've set in on mastermind meetings and just continuous. So,
I mean, I'll bet you I did thousands of hours back in 2016 alone. Once I even found out this happened, 2017, you know what that was like. You go on a date with me, we're going out somewhere like sexy for dinner, and you got the dress on, and we're in the fun car. I got like audio, like listening to like,
on the ground.
Here's how you do a wraparound. I'm like, she wants to listen to like fun music. I'm like, no, we're gonna listen to this rent to own seminar instead, right? So, but like I went down the rabbit hole of really learning. But the flip side is I didn't go too far to where I didn't take action. I learned what to do, and I took huge action steps. In the beginning, I messed up every way you possibly can. I was awful. I didn't know what I was doing. I'm talking to people about, I'm going to buy it with a wraparound. And like I said earlier, we hired some help, and then it cleaned everything up, and we just really went to town.
Yeah.
So I would say that was really the big thing for us. Good to see you, Laura. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, Matt is here. Nice to see you. What is the best way to know the right rental amount in the area? You have a couple little tricks that you like to use.
Yeah. So when I'm looking at rental comps, okay, so I'm looking at a property and the seller says, yes, I'll do terms. I find out what the payment is that we're willing to do. And now what does it rent for, right? So one of my favorite things is I go on Zillow and I look for some comparable properties and see what they're listed for rent. Are there any in the area? Are there too many in the area and it's overly saturated with them? And I have to be a little bit more aggressive on my rent price, right? So I want to be mindful of that. Now, on some situations too, I also look at apartment complexes. That's going to set the baseline for me. So why would I look at an apartment complex when I have a house? Well, if apartment complexes are renting for $1,500 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment, and I have a 3-bedroom house with a garage and all that stuff, well, I know I'm going to get more than 1,500. Pretty obvious, right? But that doesn't mean that's necessarily the comp is 1,500. So I'm not going to set mine to 1,600. I want to find out other houses in the area. Now, if I'm in an area that's a little bit more rural, sometimes I even reach out to a real estate agent, see if they have any information or any feedback. I reach out to property managers in the area and find out, hey, like if I'm looking to get this house, what are you seeing for rent in the area? So those are the handful of steps that I do. So I look for similar properties. I see what they're renting for. I look at apartment complexes to see what the very base bottom is of that market. So I have that idea. I'll talk to some agents and I'll also check with some property management companies and kind of get a good feel. The real way to tell is put out your marketing on Zillow and Facebook and all the stuff and put rent to own, and you'll start getting some calls or rental. And if you don't get many calls, you're either not marketing it enough or your price for rent is too high.
Mm-hmm. And they'll let you know.
They'll let you know. The market will talk.
Thanks for being here, Jose.
Good to see you, Jose.
Jason, how do you find these deals? They are all over, and there are so many ways to do it. Just pick one, and I'd say go real hard until you find some success. But the number one thing you want to do is generate leads. And for us, we absolutely love Facebook. I even see you have like a little Facebook icon here. So for us, it's going to find off-market sellers. So we're going to go do that on Facebook. We are going to join the local Facebook groups in the areas in which you want to invest. So I still love the Rochester, New York area. So if I were going to do it, I'd go find all the wonderful towns surrounding the city of Rochester and I'd go join those Facebook groups. What kind of groups?
Every single kind of group. So they got to have a lot of people in them.
Yep.
So let me ask, would anybody like to see me actually do it live? Put live in the comments down below. Just type in live and we'll make sure you get the invite. But I would like to probably just go live on my Facebook page and share with you, A, how I'm picking out the groups, B, how I'm joining the groups and what I do to join them the right way, how to season these groups, and then more importantly, how do I put our posts out there the most effective way? And then I have a couple key ninja techniques that we don't really talk about that much that I'm going to drop during this. If you really want to up your game,
sounds like an after hours event, if you ask me. So,
yep. So if you want to see this live and you want to be part of it and you want to make sure you get the invite, write live in the comments and I will make sure you get an invitation. We got people watching to make sure we get your name. So we'll get in contact with you when we do that. But if you want to learn how to generate all of these off-market leads for free, how do I find these deals? How do I find these sellers and these people who will want to do this? We'll show you all of it. And it doesn't cost any money, which is the best part. Because when we started, we had to spend thousands of dollars.
Yeah, $5,000.
And it, like, if we didn't have that, like, what would we have done?
Well, right? That was just for the actual letters, right? Because on top of it, then we had to pay a virtual assistant.
Yeah,
we had to pay like the company to take all the calls coming in. Like, it adds up really quickly. And so when we found this hack of how to go into Facebook, actually help real people with their houses, like instantly, you're able to communicate back and forth. So if you are interested, drop the word live. And if you want to know what that post looks like, or you want to know then what to say to these people, head over to our website, creativefinanceplaybook.com, and go get our free guide. You can download that, where we give that away for you guys. You can go start today. There's literally no excuse to go find some people. You're going to have to talk to people. That's how you're going to find the deals.
So did you say creativefinanceplaybook.com?
I did.
Well, guys, we're giving it for you. So just go get it. But here's the deal. If you're going to go there and you're going to get our blue post, which is the post we're doing in Facebook groups, and if you're going to go get our script, you got to do one thing, one deal. And the big deal is you got to keep it the same. Don't change it. And I know we always want to get something that works and change it. I'm just asking you, don't. If you really want to get the results that we're getting and our clients are getting and our own team gets, don't change it. Just do exactly what it says there and you're going to have it. And if you want to join this Facebook challenge that we're going to do, where I'm going to share.
Ooh, we're going to make a challenge out of it?
Exactly how to get these leads, like to really up your game. Because I'm not going to be like bragging or nothing, but we had a client last week I'm gonna brag.
She had 2 different viral posts.
Okay. So one of her viral posts, she put it into a Facebook group and got over 500 comments on there of people who want to sell their house. I see a lot of people texting live. I love to see it. I'm going to make sure you guys all get invites, and make sure you're commenting live below. But what would you have to pay to get 500? Maybe only half of them are leads, right? But maybe there's 250. How much would you have to pay to get 250 leads? Let me tell you, it'd be a lot of money. Okay.
Yeah.
She's able to do that for free by just using some social media groups. And the second post, how many did that get? Do you know?
It was like 400. Yeah.
She's never going to be able to market again for leads because she's going to be busy for the next like 8 months with 900 leads coming in. Jeez, that's a lot.
I know. I need to check that.
Who wants to learn how to get 900 leads like one of our clients just did? Write live below and I'll help you with that.
Great question by Nick. Do you go through a servicing company with a wrap?
So great question, Nick. We do not. There's no need to get a servicing company involved. It's just one extra payment to make, which because they're taking money for their service. If you're buying subject to, you need to get a servicing company because that's showing that you're making the payments or somebody else is. But when you buy with a wrap, we just pay their lender directly. And there's no need for a servicing company. I've heard some service companies not paying on time. Some go out of business. And you know what? That's just putting one more
question mark.
Just, I don't know, one more thing that could possibly mess up your stuff, right? And I don't want that happening. So I just set up our payments and we do it that way.
You set up the payment.
You set up the, well, now our system sets up the payment. So not even you have to do it anymore. That's the biggest win right there.
All right. We did cover this in the beginning, but we can kind of do another quick recap of, explaining the difference between the wrap concept versus taking over sub 2. Are you wrapping their existing mortgage with a 0% mortgage?
So great question. When you're doing a wrap, that means they have an existing mortgage in place. Whatever interest rate that loan has, that's the payment you're going to be making. So that's now what you're going to be paying. The way we're able to get 0% mortgages are on free and clear properties. When it's a free and clear property, there is no mortgage, so there's no need for a wrap. You'll be buying it with just straight up seller financing, where that seller now goes from being an owner to now just a bank, right? And you're going to be sending them monthly payments until you get it cashed out later on.
Good.
Great question.
Okay, I got an Instagram question over here from Jared. Most common mistakes that you see on a wrap mortgage?
Most common mistakes are people are like, I'm going to try to figure this out on my own. I think a transaction coordinator is all I need. So I think just lack of experience is probably the number one thing. I kind of was talking about this earlier, but when I got started wholesaling 24 years ago, I got a VCR tape and some books and some audio cassette tapes. And, does the price work? Yes or no? Does the cash buyer pay more? Yes. Okay, deal. Write it up, go. But with creative finance, there's just so many different layers to it. You really need to know how to cross all of the T's and dot the I's. So probably some of the biggest mistakes is just thinking that any attorney or any title company could close it. It's not. Some of the big mistakes is how to take the deed. I'm very big in taking deed into a land trust for a whole other list of reasons, which we get into a whole other podcast about. So making sure the other thing too on a wrap or even subject to is sometimes the monthly payment changes, right? There could be a shortage of escrow or overage or something could happen.
That happens a lot.
And that payment can change.
More than you think.
If your payment on that mortgage was $950, let's just say for even numbers, and then it changes to $985, you have to make sure that your payment comes in at $985. You can't send in that old payment anymore because they won't even take the entire payment at all if it's short. So it's got to be the full amount. So probably one of the big things I see is you got to verify every single month that that payment hasn't changed. And if it does, you have to, appropriately adjust your payment. So great question.
Yeah. And then someone over here on Instagram it is difficult to cash flow in California. Is a wrap still possible?
Yeah, that is a great question. So we're in South Florida. It's also very difficult to cash flow here in California, in many places. The only way that you're going to find cash flowing deals is either where you're buying it with a wrap, right? They have an existing mortgage, but they have a really low interest rate. And maybe even in some of these circumstances, you buy $1 million home, but they only took out a loan for 500,000. They didn't take out the full million. So maybe they took out the $500,000 loan and they have a 299 or 275 rate. Those are the ones that you're going to most likely cash flow on. Here's the flip side, which is, you want some good news? Here we go. 45% of all homes in America are owned outright. They don't have any debt on them. 45%. So almost half the homes are owned outright.
Boomers.
All them boomers be booming, right? But that's not a bad thing.
No.
But some of these folks need to sell their houses. And if they do, the one thing that's great about seller financing, you could tell them what the payment is. You could back into what the payment is. I could add up what the taxes will be, what the insurance will be, and say, okay, I need to rent it for this, so I need to have my payment under that. And in order to do this with tax insurance, this is how much I could afford to pay you every month, because I'm also paying tax insurance. And you could back into these deals that way on free and clear properties, as long as the seller is okay with it. So maybe in an area that's hard to cash flow, you do a lot more targeting free and clear properties where the sellers can make the payment whatever they want it to be, whatever's agreeable. Where if they have a mortgage already in place, like I'm seeing many times they do, and they have a high interest rate, I can't go up to Chase Bank and say, hey, can I get a little bit of a lower payment? I'm not cash flowing. There's nothing I could do there. So if you're in these challenging areas, there is some good luck. Get rates that have 2 and 3%, find those sellers. And then obviously free and clear properties, you could back into that payment.
Boom.
And still cash flow in these areas that they say are hard to do. They probably will be a little tricky, but you can still do it.
And then Shelly's got a great question. And so when you're,
hi, Shelly,
maybe, yes, you already have done a deal, maybe the traditional way, and this can kind of stump people from even trying, is that when you are now looking to take over a mortgage subject to, or in our case, a wraparound mortgage, what's the best response? If you can't answer the seller's question, how many have you done this way with that track record? So,
typically before I would buy them the old traditional way, but now because of the interest rates being so high, this is the only way that I could find a deal where I could pay your price, but have a low enough payment. So this will be the first one I'm going to do this way, because 2-3 years ago, rates were 2 and 3%. But now with rates being so high, this strategy is really becoming a lot more popular, because many people just bought their house a handful of years ago or refinanced and have a really low rate. So I can stretch and pay top dollar if I'm able to still get those low rates. If I have to pay that kind of price with today's rates, that deal just doesn't pencil out. So with this way I'm buying, I had to kind of shift my strategy recently with high rates, and that's why I'm doing deals this way from now on.
Yeah. So you never want to lie by any means, but really tell the story of like you said,
why?
That's such a beautiful way to explain it, because it makes total sense.
Get it, girl.
And then also I would say, we've always been a part of a community, having mentors that have done a bulk of these kind of deals, so that if a question arises, I just know I can then go back to my mentors and run things by them.
And that's the thing too, which is nice, is because a lot of our clients, there's power in numbers, right? And a lot of our clients inside the group, when they get approached that question, because many of the people we teach, either they're brand new and they've never done a deal and they're done their first deal, or many times they've already done a couple deals like traditionally and they're just sick and tired of trying that way and they want to learn this way. So when they get approached that question, they do very similar to what I just said, but also on top of that, but also I work with a network with investors who've closed hundreds of deals this way. So we make sure that we cross all of the T's and dot all the I's to make sure it's properly done, all the paperwork, attorneys, all of that. That's one extra layer that you could add to it, when you're especially in a group like ours.
Yeah. And I gotta say, give you some mad props yesterday on your live support call. Whoo, you were talking to some motivated sellers. It sounded like everyone in today's live support call was just raving about it.
Oh, it was a great call, because a lot of times our clients will bring their leads to our support calls. So in our program, we do live Zoom support calls 5 days a week for our clients. So for 5 days a week, you're sitting in a Zoom and we're talking about your deals. We're seeing if it's a good deal. We're analyzing them. We're talking about making sure you get enough leads. And then I'm calling your leads for you. I don't know anybody who's doing that. Okay. I do. I love to do it. I want to get you a deal, but more importantly, I want you to learn how to do this. How did I ask these questions? And over enough time, it's just like hearing a song or a movie or a TV show. The first time you heard the song or the movie, you don't know what's happening next. But if you've seen the movie over and over and over again, repeatedly, you know the next scene, you know the guy who said this or the lady who did that, right? You know it. So part of our strategy is you're going to be surrounded with a ton of support of these calls happening in front of you to not just get yourself a deal, but for you to learn how to do this on your own.
And
that's
when
the
it's
key.
your deal, like I remember, just that having our mentor do that, the few times, and like the light bulb that just clicked, like you were like, that's all he said, that's all he did. And then you were like off to the races. And so just to be able to provide that, not once a week for 30 minutes, but rather every single day of the week. Oh my gosh.
We were on a support call for like 2.5 hours.
I know.
It was rocking, but we had stuff going on yesterday. It was amazing Zoom. But when we first got started, I remember my first call, it's 2017. Our coach, Tony, I said, hey, I got a lead.
Who was great.
He was awesome. He's awesome. I love Tony. But I was like, hey, I got a lead. I got a guy who's open to selling his house on terms. Can we get on a 3-way call? He did. He asked some questions, and I'm sitting there like, is that all we have to do? Is just ask a couple of questions? I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do this 100 times now. Like, let's get off this call. I just want to pick up the phone and say this stuff to everybody. And I went nuts and did. And that's how we got all these deals.
Yeah. But sometimes it's just like having that second.
I needed to have that big brother looking over my shoulder to, make sure I didn't say anything dumb or right. Or make sure I'm doing it right. And that was important. When I listened to him, that kind of blazed the trail for me. And that's all I needed. I was off to the races. So
it was so awesome. I had to share that because you did such a great job. So, all right, guys, it is time to wrap up today's episode. We've had so much fun diving deep into the world of the wraparound mortgage and why we love it so much, more than a traditional subject to. But if you're looking for more, there's a live training tonight, and we are going live at 6 p.m. Eastern. If you need that, shoot us a quick message. But we're going to talk all about how we are unlocking these creative deals in today's market. So we're going to actually share our screens, show you the numbers, go behind the curtain here, and kind of let you in on our acquisitions of how we're finding these deals and a little bit more in depth in that training. So if that's something you want, definitely reach out to us. Let us know. Otherwise, tune in next week because we're going to go all about the no money down deals.
Oh boy,
Joe's
those are my favorite. Those are my favorite, guys. You are not going to want to miss that one because everybody, I see these things. Oh, they need 80 grand down, 100 grand down. They want half down, guys. If you want to learn how we do this with no money down, make sure you're on next week's podcast. Bring a notebook. This is going to be killer.
Yeah. So until next time, we are Jenn and Joe, Creative Finance Playbook. So let's go talk to sellers, generate those leads. And until next time, Creative Finance for the win.
There you go, guys. Have a great one.